Enoch Andanje, an immediate former head teacher of Bungoma High School and an aspirant in the MALAVA constituency seat, died. He has died when he was an aspirant. What effect will his death have? What effect will it have on the campaigns? Will the Electoral Commission call off the by-election? And so on and so forth. We want to look at it because showing an interest in elections is like education. Education, you start in grade 1, term 1, and then we have those, out of all those who start today grade 1, a fraction of them will graduate in the university. Meaning, all those people who showed interest in the MALAVA seat from the time it fell vacant, when the late Malulu Injendi died, there are those who showed interest, and they will continue reducing up to the time when the returning officer of the Electoral Commission will declare somebody as the next MP for MALAVA constituency. As I said, education is very different from grade 1, first term, to the final semester when a student is about to graduate. Things are different. So from the day the seat became vacant, if you showed interest in the seat, conditions are different from if you are a candidate and it was and the people were voting. The people were voting on the voting day. Just like Frederick Simiyu Masinde died. The law says that at a certain time, when one of the candidates die, the elections are called off. Now the question is, did Enoch Andanje death constitute a repeat of the elections? We will hear that. We will hear that. But first, people say that in such a situation, it is always good to observe a moment's silence. I'm not for the observing of, I would request you to observe a moment's silence after I have complete recording, because if I observe a minute silent, it will eat into your bundles. It will eat into your bundles, but then we have to look at Enoch Andanje in various perspectives. First of all, as I've said, he's the immediate former head teacher of Bungoma High School. I am an alumni of Bungoma High School. That is where I did my Form 5 and 6, 1980 and 81. So I want to join Boba. I want to join Boba in mourning him. Boba is Bungoma Old Boys Association. I want to join Boba in mourning him. 2, I will be buried in what today is called Matete Sub-County. Matete Sub-County has been oscillating between Lugari and MALAVA. There are occasions when we find ourselves in MALAVA. There are occasions when we find ourselves in Lugari. In 1992, we were in Lugari. We were in Lugari in 2002. In 2002, Matete sub-county, what today is called Matete sub-county, was part of MALAVA constituency. In 2012, we were moved to Lugari. The next change was supposed to be in 2022 or thereabout. So there are occasions when I'm in Lugari and there are occasions when I'm not in Lugari. What's more important is that Lugari, there are occasions when I'm in Lugari, there are occasions when I'm in Matete. But what is important is Likuyani, Lugari, and Malava used to be a constituency called Lurambi North. So I am somebody with more than a casual interest in what is happening in Malava constituency. Now, when a candidate, when the seat becomes vacant, the seat can become vacant in various ways. But in this case, it became vacant because the occupier died. It can become vacant, as we saw during the past, during both Angatia and Anaswa. It can become vacant due to an election petition. It can become vacant at the end of the parliamentary session, and so on and so on. So we said that this one became vacant after the former occupier died. Now, there are various stages. But let me go to the middle, the turning point. The turning point is very important because look at two people. One person was born at 11 p.m. One person was born at 11 p.m. December 31st, 1999. He or she was born at 11 p.m. Leave alone even 11:53 p.m. December 31st, 1999. Somebody else was born 10 minutes ago, 10 minutes after. That is around 6 minutes past midnight on 1st January, the year 2000. These two people do not just belong to different months, because this one was born in December and this one was born in January. They just don't belong to different years. They don't belong to different decades. They don't even belong to different centuries, but they belong to different millenniums. People who are born 10 minutes away, they belong to two different millenniums. There is that turnover. That's like a small change, and things are different. And this is the small change as far as elections, as elections conducted by IEBC is concerned. There is the nomination time, the closure of the nomination day. You are told that independent candidates or candidates sponsored by various political parties should, candidates nominated by various political parties or independent candidates should give their nomination papers between such a time and such a time. Between these two times, you are supposed to give out your nomination papers to the returning officer. After giving the nomination to the returning officer, and the returning officer declares, you as a validly nominated candidate. If you die 5 minutes or even 5 seconds after the returning officer has declared you as a candidate, then the elections will be called off. But if you die 5 minutes before the returning officer declares you as a candidate, you are not considered a candidate. So things will continue. I want to repeat that because it is very important. That is, according to me, it is very important. Immediately, the returning officer declares you validly nominated as a candidate. And in your happiness, you can be so happy you jump, and then, or you get, because of the the excitement, you get a heart attack and a seizure and you die. You will be considered to be that your name is already on the ballot paper. So once the returning officer says, candidate Raphael Saya is validly nominated on this seat as an independent, or candidate Raphael Saya has been nominated to be the ACT Mzalendo candidate for Malava. Once he says that, and you die after that, after he declares that, then the by-elections are called. But when he's dealing with your paperwork, where's your ID? You give the ID. Where's this and whatever? Where's this and then you collapse before he counterchecks all those things. You have not been nominated. So elections will continue. Now, here comes another situation. You die, or okay, let's say candidate Raphael Saya of ACT Mzalendo is preparing to hand in the papers, and he collapses and dies before, or even as the returning officer is clearing the, where's your ID, where's whatever, the person dies. Then there is a deadline, because the Electoral Commission will give out the timetable. They say, on such and such a day, between this and this time. Previously, it used to be between morning and noon, just the same day. But I think it is more than one day nowadays. So it will be said that between Monday, between Monday 8 a.m. to Tuesday noon, the two following days, between Monday 8 a.m. and Tuesday noon, each political party and each independent candidate is required to give out to come out for nomination. Now, if it reaches Tuesday noon, and you have not given, I've just given an example. If it reaches the last minute for giving nomination, if you have not given, even if you give 1 minute after, you'll be time barred. Why was, to the millenniums and the Gen Zs, why was it given 2 days or more? During our time, people used to be checked. Actually, I believe, a lawyer should correct me, but I believe that in today's constitution, it is not a must that you personally hand in the documentation. So long as whoever will go and give out your papers gives out all the things that are required. Where's the ID? Where's the copy of the ID? Where whatever? you can send somebody to do that for you. But during Moi's time, it used to be that the candidate himself or herself presents himself or herself and gives the document to the returning officer. Returning officer who was the district commissioner. The returning officer used to be the district commissioner. So the district commissioner would, it reaches that time, you have to give out. Then things used to happen. You could be kidnapped. Of course, you know that when they kidnap you, they'll get those papers and tear them. That is where Kenya came from. Or they could even kidnap you. So you used to make arrangements that a person who is not known, a person would go and stand near the DC's place. And then you would come from the other direction. And at the gate, he would hand over the papers to you and you present the papers. But it used also to happen that during those days, we had cases where, you see at the DC's place, there is a public address system. There is a lot of noise and whatever people are going to pick to give in their nomination papers and so on. And then some candidates most of the towns used to have pit latrine. So someone would go to a public toilet for the call of nature. And once he or she is in that toilet, someone would just lock it from the outside. And the man or woman would make noise for somebody to open that place. But because of the loudspeakers at the DC's place, you would not be heard, and the time would pass. That is why it was decided that more time be extended, and also a regulation be allowed that so long as whoever is going to give you particulars has all of them, it was not compulsory for you to be there. This is to avoid a situation where you can be kidnapped and so on and so forth. So the law today states this way, that whether you are presenting yourself or you send an agent, an advocate, or somebody you trust, goes and gives out your nomination paper, and they are accepted by the returning officer. The returning officer stands up and says that Raphael Saya has been nominated as the candidate for ACT Mzalendo for MALAVA constituency. When he says that, or he has been, he is now an independent candidate for MALAVA constituency. From that time on, that candidate, if he dies, or any other candidate who has been so called dies, it is repeated. But as you are processing papers, I'm repeating that for clarity. Uh, I'm declaring that for clarity, so that if it is a minute or so before the deadline, the last day, the last minute, you die, then your party will not present somebody. Now, here is the problem. The party, I would advise all parties included, to have plan B. Because you could belong to a party like NCCR Mageusi, but ACT Mzalendo has bought you. So it reaches a last minute, your party expects you to hand in paper. You don't hand in a paper. So political party should have a plan B. Such a thing that it happens, you can place there your person immediately. In cases where your candidate can be bought in the last minute. Now, I also want to say this. Supposing, because it doesn't matter, he was not even nominated by his party. We have some parties, I can't recall which, but we have, I think, DCP, if I'm not wrong. DCP may have settled for Seth Panyako, I'm not sure. But I'm talking of a party that has settled for one candidate. It becomes a challenge that the party will now has to start again. Now, supposing the candidate dies a day or after, that is why you now find in Kenya people rushing up and down, taking the I nearly said ECK, taking the IBC to court to postpone to whatever. Uh, yes, it will be postponed because the first thing that the courts do once you take a case to court is that they stop the thing. But at the end of the day, a decision will be made that that is an act of God, and it has determined that your party will not have a person. That is, if your party has a candidate who dies 5 minutes to the deadline, but if he dies 5 days after, okay, you have had your party nomination, you have nominated so and so, and once you have nominated so and so, let us even talk of a week to nomination, he dies. If we take it a week to nomination, he dies, of course his papers will not be given. It is upon that party to look for uh, another person to take that mantle. Now that is where internal fights within a party costs the party, because within that 1 week you may find a party headquarters, some would even say let number two step in, or people say no, let us go back for party nomination. There will be an injunction. Number two, the person who was number two, would be the last person to encourage the fresh nomination. So whichever way, if the party decides that number two, if the party decides that number two would automatically take, you'll find other candidates will be against it. But if the party decides that they go for fresh nominations, from fresh party nomination, you'll find that number two will take the case to court. This is what I'm saying, that a political party, it is better for your candidate to die after his name or her name appears, is accepted by the returning officer. Once the returning officer has accepted a candidate's name, once the returning officer has accepted, it is as good as the name of that candidate appearing on the ballot paper. So what happens is, if someone dies before the ballot papers are printed or anything or whatever, the printing is stopped and the whole thing is stopped, and a new by-election will be immediately. The turning point, as I said, or the turning of from 1 million, from 20th century to 21st century, is this. It is that the returning officer has accepted verbally that you are a candidate for ACT Mageuzi or NCCR. It is NCCR Mageuzi and ACT Mzalendo. Now, if the returning officer has declared you the candidate for NCCR Mageuzi, verbally, it is declared that you are a candidate. It is just as good as somebody dying on the election day, or somebody dying even as the ballots are being counted. You know, it's funny. You don't know. If they are counting votes and one of the candidates dies before the returning officer declares the winner, you see, you can be the last person, isn't it? You can be the last person. You have reached the balloting. People are balloted now. The counting clerks are there. The presiding officers are now bringing in. Before the returning officer declares who the next MP is, even if candidate Raphael Saya is the last person on the list, and before the returning officer declares somebody else to be the duly elected, and Raphael Saya dies, it will be declared null and void. So this is what I was saying. It is not just at when people are voting or anything. No. It is before the returning officer has tabulated, all the ballots in that constituency before the returning officer has what we call consolidated all the ballots in that constituency. If one dies, irrespective, you cannot even now go and say, no. You see, mm, even the votes, after all, we had counted 80%, and you see, even if he would have gotten all the votes that were remaining, no. The law says that before we complete that election, whatever, a candidate who appears on the ballot paper, if he dies or she dies, then the whole thing is declared suspended until a fresh ones are called. But before the returning officer, I'm repeating it again for emphasis, before the returning officer declares you as a candidate, if you die, it is upon your party to come up with an alternative name. I said a party should also have an alternative name. Should you reach a last minute na unanunuliwa and you don't present your, but let us not talk about kununuliwa. Let us talk of a situation where candidate Raphael Saya has been nominated. Candidate Raphael Saya has been nominated for the ACT Mzalendo. And then, before the returning officer accepts the nomination, candidate Raphael Saya dies. Candidate Raphael Saya dies. When does he die? You see, the earliest he can die is after the party has settled on him. And the last time he has to die is the closing time. Now, if he dies immediately after he has been selected, the party has more time to look for an alternative. But if he dies 3 or 4 minutes before the closure of the time, and that is why I was saying the parties should have plan B. If it happens that time, but even if it happens that time, knowing Kenya the way I know, kindly expect that cases will go to court. People will rush to court. They'll start to complain this and that, and it will end up in that party not having a candidate on that by-election. It so happened, if you know very well, do you know that during 2007, there were people, during the 2007, there are people who were elected in Nyanza. I don't know which party it was in 2000. I think it was PNU. There are some people who was elected in South Nyanza, that is Migori and Homa Bay, on PNU. How did they become PNU councillors? What happened was that maybe even today, once you are nominated to be a candidate for ODM, know that in Luo Nyanza or Luo land, it is as good as you becoming the councillor, the MCA, the MP, the women, whatever. So what happened was these people were approached by PNU. These people were approached by PNU, and that is the problem that Raila has ever had. He never investigates activities in his stronghold. He never investigates activity in the enemy's stronghold. So what happened in other parties, they knew, PNU knew that anybody who contests the PNU seat in Luo land obviously will not be elected. They knew that. But still, they planted the people there as candidates, not just as candidates, also as agents, because elections are stolen in strongholds. Elections are stolen in strongholds. Elections are never stolen in swing areas. They are always stolen in strongholds. Now, these people knew, the PNU people knew that in Luo land, that is where if they don't put their agents and candidates, that is where elections, the votes are stolen. But Raila has always, he never learns. Whenever he assumes that he'll never get votes in, say, a certain area, Shinyanga province, he would not place their agents, he would not place their candidates there and whatever. So what happened in South Nyanza, that is Migori and Homa Bay counties, this is what happened. Some people approached, asked to contest as councillors of PNU. When they were asked to contest as councillors and councillors of PNU in that area, they said, but you know that in Luo land, contesting for any seat, if you are not in the ODM, you don't win. They were called aside and were told, suppose we give you so much money for your name just to appear there, and for your name just to appear on the ballot, and for you to act as our agent. Can this envelope please you? They looked at the envelope, and so it was okay. It was a bargain. Then it reached a time during the ODM nomination. I think it was 2007. It came time for ODM nomination, and what happened was that those people, those candidates who lost in the ODM nomination, went to court, and the court barred the Electoral Commission from receiving what do you call nomination paper from the people who won the. So the PNU fellows went there and presented their ballot, their nomination paper. They took their nomination paper and were elected on the spot, because having no other candidate for the seat of councillor in this and that ward, you are now declared a councillor elected and opposed. This fellow pocketed the money that he was given by PNU, and here he was now elected and opposed as a councillor in South Nyanza. But what happened? Because of the 2007 post-election violence, they ran to Tanzania and became refugee there. But what the history knows is that, and I'm sure they were even later paid the salary of councillors for that period. So those are the challenges that I've seen it. They are good. It is good for me to introduce here in such a way that a party, in this case UDA, you see, Enoch Andanje wanted to contest on a UDA seat. Now, after that, the UDA is going to have its own, what do you call, party nomination. I would tell UDA and any other political party in Malava and any other political party, apart from parties, we have parties like my alumni in Bungoma has taken Inspector Wajakoya's Roots Party, and so that one he's going there unopposed. But in other parties, there could be nomination and whatever. I would tell all those parties that do not have direct tickets to be very careful with the way they handle the party nomination, because it is quite possible. It is quite possible that the losing person, either on his or on her own initiative, or through influence. You see, there are these, especially these rich parties. These rich parties could sponsor somebody in your party. They could sponsor somebody in your party who, after losing, takes the case to court to an extent that you'll still be fighting over yourself within your party, and the party and IEBC nomination comes, your party will be locked out. With those very many remarks, I want still to pass my condolences to the the people of Malava and Bungoma High School.